And welcome back to the Correspondents on Voice of America. I'm Arcega in Washington. And finally, the political mess in South Korea. Elected on a no corruption ticket, South Korean President Park Geun-hye now looks set to become that country's first sitting president to be formally questioned as a suspect in a criminal investigation. Now, South Korean opposition parties began planning for the possible impeachment of the president after prosecutors labeled her a co-conspirator in an influence peddling scandal involving a longtime friend and some of Park's closest aides. Now, the prosecution claims the evidence implicates President Park as an accomplice to alleged crimes involving abuse of authority, coercion, fraud, and extortion. And to talk about the legal and political quagmire that the South Korean president suddenly finds herself in, I'm joined here in Washington by two journalists who have been watching the situation very closely in South Korea. One is the host of VOA's Asia Weekly, our very own Steve Miller. And we're also joined by our social media blogger, Abbey Lee, who also happens to be the host of VOA's International Edition. I thank you both for joining me. This is an issue that you first posed to me. I didn't know anything about it, Steve, when you mentioned it. But this may be the first time, in fact, that a South Korean president has been named a criminal suspect. So explain to our viewers how Park Geun-hye all of a sudden finds herself embroiled in this political mess.
This is a very complicated and convoluted scandal. I mean, at the center you have President Park Geun-hye, her longtime friend and confidant Choi Soon-sil. But there's so many layers, so many alleged crimes taking place.
So much intrigue, right?
Right. I mean, whether it be the alleged ties to a shamanistic cult that Choi Soon-sil's father held back in the 70s that had heavily influenced and connected with Park's father, whether it's the alleged extortion from conglomerates, whether it's the influence peddling and influence that may have addressed
so how did the president all of a sudden find herself embroiled in essentially an extortion racket?
Well, that remains to be seen how directly tied President Park Geun-hye is in all this. What is alleged to have happened is that Choi Soon-sil had ties or had some influence and connections with two of her foundations that got money from conglomerates in South Korea. And the prosecution in South Korea says that Park Geun-hye, the president of South Korea, had some knowledge or had some connection or was complicit in some of that activity.
So, tell me a little bit about this person, Choi Soon-sil.
I just want to add a little bit to what Steve has said, though, because it actually unraveled in a very typical South Korean fashion involving a college entrance exam. So Choi Soon-sil's daughter
That's interesting. Tell me.
Yeah, so she got into a very prestigious women's university in South Korea. But she's not known to be the sharpest tool in the shed. So it started out with an investigation into how did she get in there, and it looks like Choi Soon-sil used her influence to get her daughter involved. And you know, in Asia, college entrance is a big deal. So that really kind of fueled people's curiosity and led into who is this person and what is she doing?
So how does this person, Choi Soon-sil, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, has no government role, has no government title. How does she all of a sudden have that much pull over the South Korean president?
So it's actually her dad who had very strong influence on Park Geun-hye, because when she first met him, she was only 23 and her mother just passed away. And you know, when you're 23 and you're in a really weak position, that's when a lot of cult leaders want to kind of prey on the weak. So he actually approached her saying that, I can hear your dead mother's voice. Let me talk to you. I know it's terrible, but it worked. And even after he passed away, you know, his daughter has a complete control over her.
So, Steve, tell me about the opposition parties. Are they taking advantage of this? Are they having a field day with this
Well,
issue?
from the get-go, the opposition parties called for her resignation, called for her to step down. There were some calls for her to be impeached as well.
Right.
Now, up until about a week ago, the opposition party had thought about moving towards impeachment, but after the prosecution named her as a possible, being involved as a suspect in some alleged activities, they did say that they would move forward with that. Now, to actually move into impeachment territory in South Korea is a little bit complicated.
Right?
And if you bring together all the opposition parties in the National Assembly, they may have enough votes to begin the process, but actually to impeach President Park Geun-hye, it doesn't look like they have the numbers yet.
Now, what we have been seeing is a very strong reaction by the South Korean public. They've been huge protest. What do they want?
So they definitely wanted to either resign or to get impeached. But like Steve said, it's a very long process. And the next presidential election is only a year later. So even if they want her to step down and find someone new, there's really no viable candidate at this point. And as you know, one of the strongest candidates is UN Secretary
Ban Ki-moon.
Ban Ki-moon. And
does he even want the job, though, I guess is my question.
I think a lot of people expect him to step up to the plate, but whether he wants a job, I mean, I'm not a shaman myself, so I wouldn't really know.
It's hard to say. So what's, Steve, what is this doing to South Korea's economy?
Well, in the macro sense, not a lot.
Really?
South Korea has a fairly stable economy. Over the terms of the time of the scandal, the Kospi, the main stock index, has dropped about 2.5%, 3%. But over the last few days, it has regained some of that ground. So it's fluxing a little bit. But like with all markets, when there's uncertainty, you see some volatility.
Has Chae Soon already had her day in court? Has she already pleaded guilty? What is her status right now?
So she is arrested, but I think Steve can tell you more about the technical aspect of it. But what I find is that although she's arrested, people are still not happy because they're not after her. They're after the president.
Right.
So her resignation is more important.
I got like 30 seconds. So, Steve, this is not the end of this. This is just the beginning of these. Can we expect to see a lot more protests as a result of this?
Yeah.
What kind of uncertainty is South Korea?
On Wednesday of this week, offices of Samsung were raided. The National Pension Service was raided. Educational offices associated with the University IDE were raided. Largest protest yet is scheduled for this weekend, so more definitely to see.
I'm going to be looking forward to your reports online, so thank you so much. Abbey Lee and Steve Miller. Join us again next week for another edition of The Correspondents. In the meantime, stay up to date with the latest developments around the world. All you got to do, go to voanews.com and do check out this and other shows. Just click on the Watch tab on the upper right. We're also on Facebook and YouTube at VOA The Correspondents. I'm Arcega for now. So long from Washington.